Max Verstappen is an absolute force of nature in Formula One at the moment, but does that brilliance come with potentially a downside for his employer Red Bull? Here to help me find out if that is the case is Scott Mitchell and Ed Straw. Scott, could there possibly be any sort of negatives for Red Bull about Verstappen's performance at the moment?
Well, when you look at what he's doing on track and the results he's scoring, it's kind of difficult to make an argument for there being any downside, isn't it? He's way ahead in terms of points than he or either Red Bull driver was at this stage last season. He's ended Honda's win drought with Red Bull. He's got that partnership off to a flying start. He's the only person that seems capable of fighting Lewis Hamilton, so all that seems amazing. But the problem is that Red Bull has now become totally reliant on Verstappen. Does that then create a weakness for Red Bull? If you're reliant on one driver and that driver disappears, you then have to look to who else have you got within the pool. And because of Verstappen, they don't have the same depth that they might have had a few years ago. He's become such a, as you said, a force of nature that he's the worst teammate you could have in Formula One at the moment. Verstappen just destroys his teammates. So I think he's the worst person, especially when you're in a team like Red Bull, which, as Pierre Gasly has found out, isn't afraid to pull the trigger if you're not delivering. That's
the thing, isn't it, Ed? By the time we get to the Belgian Grand Prix, Gasly's not in that second Red Bull anymore. It's Alexander Albon who now gets a chance. And this is just the latest in what is actually a line of drivers who have kind of fallen by the wayside or chosen to walk away perhaps from the Red Bull stable because of Verstappen.
Yeah, they have fallen like skittles in the Max Verstappen era. Even before he came into Formula One, Jean-Eric Vergne was an incumbent at Toro Rosso. Max Verstappen came into that lineup in 15. No more space for Vergne. Carlos Sainz then, of course, as well, missed out seemingly on his promotion to Formula One because of that same phenomenon with Verstappen coming in. Then, of course, we had Daniel Kvyat. Verstappen was promoted in Kvyat's place, and this was far more about Verstappen's irresistible rise than it was about Kvyat underperforming, because, lest we forget, his performance level in that team is actually much better than Gasly's has been this year. Then we have Daniel Ricciardo, who moved on. He will admit to so many reasons why he left that team, but the one he rails against is the idea that he was moving to get away from Verstappen and the fact that this was Team Verstappen. But clearly that was a very significant reason. Now we have Pierre Gasly, who just could not live up to matching or supporting Verstappen properly. Next up we have Albon. Very, very tough gig. You have to be performing at a good level to be within a couple of tenths consistently of Verstappen, and that's the target he needs to aim for.
Yeah, let's talk about Albon, Scott. He's got effectively a trial run now with the Red Bull team, something Gasly didn't have. What can we expect from the rest of the season for Albon? Is the seat his to lose, or is there a wider picture at play here for 2020?
This is definitely Albon's opportunity to stake a claim, which is pretty amazing for a driver that wasn't meant to be in F1 this year. And now he's got 9 races to try and bag a title-winning car for 2020, which is pretty incredible. I think all 3 of the other drivers at Red Bull, besides Verstappen, have an opportunity to partner Verstappen at Red Bull next year. Red Bull put Albon in because they've got previous knowledge of what Kvyat's like to work with because of his stint, as Ed talked about, at Red Bull Racing, and they're seeing him up close again, this new mature Kvyat at Toro Rosso. So they've got a good reference point for him. They've seen what Gasly can do. They're not particularly happy with what Gasly can do at the moment. So he's not been sacked. He's just back at Toro Rosso to rebuild his confidence, sort of, and he stays in the picture. So what they're doing is Red Bull's got this unique situation where it does have a pool of active drivers racing in F1, and it can rotate them. They can just, put you there, and we'll just work out what's best for the team overall. So I think all 3 are still in the picture. The key thing for Albon is there's sort of a plus and a negative. The plus is that he doesn't, as Ed said, need to match Verstappen. Verstappen's the guy there to win races and finish titles. He needs to play a supporting role. If he can prove he's good enough to do that, and I think he actually stands a very good chance of doing better than Gasly did, even if it takes him a couple of races to get up to speed. So that's the positive. The negative is that I think part of this decision is motivated by Red Bull and Honda's progress being so good that Red Bull's 2019 season has changed in terms of context. They've now got a chance to gun for Ferrari for second in the Constructors' Championship. Gasly wasn't doing a good enough job. Albon can't just slot in and do the same thing Gasly was doing. If there's a chance of finishing second in the Constructors, he needs to bag some serious results, which means although it's that really weird sort of twisted scenario where, okay, you go in and we know you're in a tough situation, so you've got a bit of time, but also by the end of the year you need to be there. But also, can you get results straight away, please, because we want to finish second in the championship. So really difficult situation. I think he's going to... I would really like to see him make the most of it. I think he's got a very good chance of making the most of it. And I think he's got the best opportunity at the moment to nab that 2020 seat.
I think Albon also has one advantage over Gasly, because what's become very clear with Gasly this year is that he's not been adaptable enough. With Toro Rosso last year, he worked very, very well with a quite attacking driving style. He'd quite aggressively rotate the car on the brakes. You'd see this right from the start of FP1, and that worked really well with Toro Rosso. The Red Bull, that style hasn't worked quite so well. He's been quite aggressive, often braking later than Verstappen, but he's not rotating the car properly. He's inducing understeer, and he doesn't seem to have bought into adapting. Now, Albon, one of the things that's impressed me about him this year is he has been adaptable. By nature, he's quite a smooth driver, the kind of Ricciardo, Button, carrying the speed into the apex style, but the Toro Rosso doesn't necessarily respond so well to that, and he has been able to adapt to a style that needs to be a little bit more, you might say, agricultural in the Toro Rosso again this year. It's a car that has got pace in it, but it does require a bit of driving. It always looks quite lively. So I actually think his default style will be more compatible with the Red Bull, because that is the way Verstappen gets good pace out of it. He's not as leery as perhaps he once was in Formula One. And I think also that adaptability, the mindset, the ability to say, actually, my style isn't necessarily perfect for this, and tweak it and adapt it, that's a very, very encouraging sign for him. If he can apply what he's done at Toro Rosso this year, or in the first half of this year rather, to Red Bull in the second half of this year, then he's definitely got a better chance than Gasly of adapting and getting closer to Verstappen.